Jesus. Hey, welcome back. Derek here. My friends call me D-Rock, which means you can call me D-Rock. Here with another reaction to Ren down into the rabbit hole. Today we're checking out suicide. And on this channel, I take a deep dive into meaningful living. So I look at these songs, I look at poetry, I look at other forms of art through the lens of meaningful living. Meaningful living includes everything that we can do to get to the end of our lives and feel like our mind was, or our life was meaningful. This includes things like personal values, purpose, narratives, mindsets, mindfulness, resilience, everything that we can use to appreciate the good side of life and to cope with and tolerate and get through the bad side of life. So without further ado, let's get into Suicide by Ren. If you're new here with Ren, I like to watch one time through, no interruptions, just to see how the song hits me. And the second time through, which is optional, you don't have to stick around for that. But on the second time, we'll talk about this song. Are there any questions that come up? What might he mean? Is there any interpretations, anything, any lessons in there, things that we can learn? So without further ado, let's get Ren, Suicide. Let's go.
Through the cracks of the night sky, a light goes out on the other side. Suicide, suicide, suicide. Oh, treading on the tracks in the night time. It never really felt like the right time. Suicide, suicide, suicide. I'm so fucking lonely beneath this. Narcissistic, can't keep a secret. Miscount sheep, but can't sleep, a misfit. Some say trouble, but some say sadistic. Bruise is my brother, one time or the other. My skin felt counterfeit, silicone rubber. Bruise is my sister, skin pop the blister. Dig deep, resist the feeling when it hits you. Falling through the cracks of the night sky. A light goes out on the other side. Suicide, suicide, suicide. Treading on the tracks in the night time. It never really felt like the right time. Suicide, suicide, suicide. Sick boy, bitten by a tech boy. I feel like it's not me, it's the world that's sick. I'm so fucking washed up and seasick. Masochistic kid with a split lip. 6 feet deep, I can't eat, I'm nervous. Won't stay down cause my body purges. Useless my mother, can't keep in my supper. Skin so pale cause my cheeks leak colour. Truth is my father, you choose your karma. Draw for the sword, then drive through the armour. Falling through the cracks of the night sky. A light goes out on the other side. Suicide, suicide, suicide. Treading on the tracks in the night time. It never really felt like the right time. Suicide, suicide, suicide. 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 It's hard to take off from the ground when your wings are cut. Your stomach burns when you're drinking from an empty cup. You know the entire ocean came from my tear ducts. I see the world through Fibonacci sequences and double dutch. I guess there's some that's born lucky, there's some that's not. I tried to cut away my bitterness, hatchet job. I locked my youth inside a trunk, inside a pickup truck, then dumped the whole thing over that same bridge the night you jumped. I think about that sometimes, vividly. What it felt like to look down and see tranquility. One sudden movement in a world of possibility. Only one movement to expose our fragility. I fucking miss you, and I miss myself. I miss thinking we were indestructible as well. I miss chilling by the pier cave and kicking back with Callum, Hugo, Sega, Justin, Stevie and the fucking lads. I miss missing that. I numb myself to close the gap. I never even call them up. The distance is my plastic cast. The truth is to the day you jumped, my childhood jumped too. But I still can't find that anger. All I find is missing you, man, I miss you. with all my rhymes. I picture running 5 minutes quicker, I'm right on time. I picture pulling you back over the edge and then we're crying, and holding you, my brother, and telling you that it's fine. Not the way that it worked, cause I was late like a jerk. There's not a day where I could find a way to break from the hurt. Your body missing, so we never got to wave to the hearse. I hope you're listening, I love you, man, I miss you absurd. Fuck.
Jesus. Another powerful one, another. So is this Joe that he's talking about? So Joe, I think when I watched Freckled Angels, I knew he was talking about Joe, but I don't remember if I picked up if Joe committed suicide or passed away some other way, some other kind of accident. If he's talking about Joe, then he jumped off a bridge, and Ren was late. Ren was on his way there, but was late and just missed it. That's tough. That's tough. Because there's going to be a lot of guilt associated with that. Okay, so I'm going to jump into this again. I do have the lyrics up in front of me. I was mesmerized the first time by the editing, by the video production. It was amazing. So I want to check this out again, and let's see what we can see. I got the lyrics in front of me here.
Through the cracks of the night sky, a light goes out on the other side. Suicide, suicide, suicide.
I've fallen through the cracks, and a light goes out on the other side. I've fallen through the cracks of the night sky. That one's above my pay grade. I can't. On the other side, a light goes out.
Treading on the tracks in the night time. It never really felt like the right time. Suicide, suicide.
Okay, so this is the main question I had the first time through. It never really felt like the right time. Suicide. Is he saying he never felt like it was the right time for him to commit suicide, but he has definitely thought about it? I think I have picked up on themes like that before. So it's been on his mind, but I'll do that later, kind of thing. Is that what I'm picking up here?
Suicide. I'm so fucking lonely beneath this narcissistic, can't keep a seat.
There's that pig again. We're gonna see this pig a lot. But they're different pigs, aren't they? They're not always the same pig.
Miscount sheep, I can't sleep, a misfit. Some say trouble, but some say sadistic. Bruises my brother, one time or the other. My skin felt counterfeit, silicone rubber. Bruises my sister, skin pop the blister. Dig deep, resist the feeling when it hits you.
So I'm lonely beneath this narcissistic. Well, narcissistic is a way of being. I'm so lonely beneath this shell this mask that I have on of a narcissistic person. But if I take that mask off underneath, I'm really lonely. And, resist the feeling when it hits you. I think that's going to be the same thing that we talked about last time. Resist that suicidal feeling when it hits you.
Falling through the cracks of the night sky. A light goes out on the other side. Suicide, suicide, suicide.
This editing is great.
Treading on the tracks in the night time. It never really felt like the right time. Suicide, suicide, suicide.
Okay, so obviously he recorded this after Sick Boy, or at least he knew what he was going to do when he recorded Sick Boy.
I feel like it's not me, it's the world
I'm so fucking washed up and see.
So that's, look at this. And that was coming out of, I think that was a direct line from Sick Boy, but I feel like it's the world that's sick, not me. That's very common because we can only experience and perceive our own consciousness. Right? We're the center of our own universe. Really, everything that I experience, I directly experience. Everything that you experience has to be communicated to me somehow. So even if you perfectly communicate your experience, I still can't experience what you experience. So that's it's always going to feel like I'm the center of the universe, really. I'm always going to feel like I'm me and you're not me. That sounds completely simplistic. I know how that sounds, but the point being, there's a cliche, I'm not crazy, you're crazy. I'm not crazy, the world is crazy. Because it doesn't feel like there's anything wrong with us. But we live in a society that likes to pathologize everything. You don't fit into the right peg, so therefore you're wrong. Okay, that's what you're saying, but I feel like I'm doing the right thing and everybody else, society, is wrong. That's what it's going to feel like. And that's without any value judgment on top of that. Because it could very well be the case that I'm the only sane person in a room full or a world full of insane people. But majority rules, and they're going to call me insane. But remember, from my mind, it feels like this is right. What I'm doing is the right way. And it's weird that everybody else sees it differently.
I feel like it's not me, it's the world that's sick.
I'm so fucking washed up and seasick. Masochistic kid with a split lip. 6 feet deep, I can't eat, I'm nervous. Won't stay down cause my body purges.
I can't eat, it won't stay down. So, sounds like he's talking about physical complications, possibly
Useless, my
domestication.
mother, can't keep in my supper. Skin so pale, cause my cheeks leak colour. Truth is my father, you choose your karma. Draw for the sword, then drive through the armor. Oh, I, falling through the cracks of the night sky. A light goes out on the other side. Suicide, suicide, suicide. Oh, I, treading on the tracks in the night time. It never really felt like the right time. Suicide, suicide, suicide. Suicide, suicide, suicide. Suicide, suicide, suicide. Suicide, suicide, suicide. Suicide, suicide, suicide.
So that's the first part of the song. You might even call it the song. And then this outro, or this second piece, is kind of like I don't want to call it outro, but addendum, or this is the personal message. This is the diary. Ren's diary here.
It's hard to take off from the ground when your wings are cut. Your stomach burns when you're drinking from an empty cup. You know the entire ocean came from my tear ducts. I see the world through Fibonacci sequences and double dutch.
I see the world through Fibonacci sequences and double dutch. I forget the song where he said, oh, what was this? Heretic, I think, where he said, creativity is when I'm seeing patterns that other people don't see. It's easy for me to see these patterns. And some people call it creativity, but I call it being unwell. Or what's the cost of this creativity, I think is what he's talking about. What's the price of this creativity? On one hand, these things don't seem to be going well. On the other hand, I can pick up on all these patterns. Like I see the world through Fibonacci sequences.
I guess there's some that's born lucky, there's some that's not.
Now, this is a very, you could argue both sides of this. There's some that are born lucky, there's some that are not. There's a different school of thought that says if you were born at all, you're lucky. And then you might say, well, what about the people that are born into a poor country and they get whipped and beaten and everything all day long? They're not lucky. Correct. And now you're getting into the world of existentialism, which says it doesn't matter which end of the spectrum, the person I just described, or even the whatever you describe as the opposite of that. Everybody's going to describe somebody different. The person who doesn't have any bad luck at all. What does that mean to you? Who's that person? Do you get that person in your mind? The existentialists will say no matter who it is, once you're born, you're thrown into this life without permission, without consent. You didn't choose to be born. And now that you're here, you're going to get the shit kicked out of you all the time. Life is nothing but struggle. Life is nothing but problems. And therefore, it would be better if you were not born. All of us. And so now you've got the ticket, and that's interesting, because now I'm looping this around to exactly what this song is called, Suicide. So the existentialists have a problem. How do you talk about suicide? Because if I would have been better off never existing, in other words, never being born, this is my life. And if you take a freedom approach to this, it's my life, and now I have the right to do whatever I want, so long as it doesn't impinge on your right to do whatever you want. It's my life. So isn't it my life to take? That's the existential take. Interestingly, this song is called Suicide, and we got there. So anyway, the one school of thought is some people are born lucky and some people are not. And now you're getting into false dichotomous thinking, and that there's two groups. And every time you create groups, you create struggle. You create, totally blanking on the word here, conflict. So now there's us versus them. Anytime you create us versus them, you create conflict. So there's the lucky ones and there's the unlucky ones. Now you're just creating, you have to fall into one of these camps. So I don't think that's how deep he was going. I'm just adding this just to add it. He's just saying there's some people that are unlucky. In fact, luck, what do you define as luck? Luck to somebody is unnoticed to another person and could be even unlucky to a third person. So this is totally a value judgment, what luck is and what luck isn't.
Fibonacci sequences and double dutch. I guess there's some that's born lucky, there's some that's not. I tried to cut away my bitterness, hatchet job. I locked my youth inside a trunk, inside a pickup truck.
Tried to cut away my bitterness, but it was a hatchet job. So I was trying to cut out the bitterness, which means there's a part of me that I didn't like, and I called that bitterness. Now, there's a couple of ways to view this. Is this a part of me, this bitterness? And if I'm trying to cut away a part of me, what's left? Because that part of me actually was a part of me. And a different way to view life is to think about externalizing what you might call problems. So you're not the problem is the problem. So instead of there's a part of me that's bitter, maybe bitterness comes sometimes. Bitterness shows up. You might even name it. Mr. Mischief shows up, or Mr. Angry shows up and makes me bitter. Right? But trying to separate yourself from the problem turns this into, you're not identifying anymore. I am not bitter, or even a part of me is not bitter. No. There's you, and bitterness shows up. You can do this with emotions. I am angry, I am sad is different from I'm feeling angry and I'm feeling sad. You are not the problem. The problem is the problem. But that's tough. That takes practice. That's not how we're hardwired. So the default is for me to identify with these feelings, or to identify with my thoughts, or I identify with something else. Breaking identification is a magic trick that helps you see the world for what it is. It lets you see emotions for what they are, just patterns of energy that react, that are set off. So an emotion, okay, I didn't think I was going to talk about it. An emotion. What is an emotion? It's a sensation in the body that's been trained by your subconscious. So this idea that there's a universal emotion is, there's lots of research that's starting to debunk that. You've learned, and it's tough to get rid of because there's these cultural messages. You should feel afraid when, and so that's what you pick up. You pick these up from your cultural upbringing, or not even cultural, familiar, your family upbringing. You should feel afraid if. And then that's the story. So an emotion, to finish that thought, to land the plane on this, is some physiology, some bodily feelings, plus a story. Body, feeling, plus a story. Now, if the story, that's driven, that's trained by your upbringing. Everything that you've seen has told you what story that is. The physiology has been trained subconsciously. So if I'm feeling some butterflies in the stomach, and I used to live in a bad neighborhood and had to walk home from work at night, that body was gearing me up for running away. And then the story I tell myself is, this is a bad neighborhood and the bad kids are out right now. So I'm calling that fear. That's one where it kind of makes sense. Now, sometimes I might go out to prepare for a talk and I might feel those similar feelings. And if I say that must be fear, I'm afraid to go give this talk, I'm going to be afraid to give the talk because it's the type of thing that it self-satisfies. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. Now, if I can take those same feelings and instead of calling it nervousness or fear, I call it excitement, because excitement and nervousness have the same bodily sensations. Now I can reframe that as I'm excited to give this talk. Same bodily sensations, different story. So mindfulness and breaking identification is a way to just see these things for what they are, just patterns of energy, and then I assign the story to it. Sometimes you need that story. Sometimes I am actually afraid because I am walking through the woods and I don't have bear spray with me and I know that there's cubs and grizzly bears nearby. Yes, 100% I need to be afraid, but I can see that for what it is. I don't just need to blindly reply or, react to whatever my body's doing. And the whole point of this part, in my opinion, is he's feeling guilty. Again, guilt, as any other emotion, will come and it will go if you let it. If it comes in and we try to block it, then it's going to get bottled up. If it comes in and we don't want it, it's going to stick around for longer than it normally would. But guilt, like anything else, is a pattern of energy. So when you feel any raw emotion, you can ask yourself, where do I feel this? How do I know I'm guilty or afraid or angry? Where does that show up in my body? How would I communicate to somebody that I'm feeling guilt? And that pattern of energy, and then the story. The story is going to be, guilt is usually the perception that I've taken away somebody else's rights. The opposite, it's kind of the opposite of anger. The anger is the emotion I feel when I feel that you've taken away my right. You've impinged on my right. So guilt is when I feel like I've taken your rights away. If you aren't careful, that guilt, which is I did something wrong, however you're defining wrong, because wrong is just a value judgment, can quickly turn into I am a bad person. I did something bad, guilt. I am bad, shame. So anything you can do to try to stay off the shame train is, so guilt. I did something wrong. That's my behavior. That's somebody that showed up. That's that visitor. I'm externalizing the problem. Or guilt. I don't know if I said guilt or shame, but guilt is some behavior. Shame is now I'm identified with being a bad person. It's not externalized. So we want to try to keep guilt from becoming shame. And we do that by being with the emotion, learning from the emotion, and then seeing what's in our control. What can we actually do right now?
Then dump the whole thing over that same bridge the night you jumped.
I locked my youth in a trunk inside a pickup truck. I locked my youth in a trunk and put it in a truck and dumped the whole thing over the bridge when he jumped. So he's saying that his friend jumped and with him went his childhood.
I think about that sometimes, vividly. What it felt like to look down and see tranquility. One sudden movement in a world of possibility. Only one movement to expose our fragility. I fucking miss you, and I miss myself. I miss thinking we were indestructible as well. I miss chilling by the pier cave and kicking back with Callum, Hugo, Sager, Justin, Stevie and the fucking lads. I miss missing that. I numb myself to close the gap.
I miss missing that. So he says, I used to miss that, but I've numbed myself. And I think he even says, I don't even talk to those people anymore. So he that's like a second step. It's a second layer. I miss that. Now I miss missing that.
If I even call them up, the distance is my plastic as the truth is to the day you jump, my childhood jumped too. But I still can't find the anger. All I find is missing you, man, I miss you. With all my rhymes, I picture running 5 minutes quicker, I'm right on time. I picture pulling you back over the edge and then we're crying, and holding you, my brother, and telling you that it's fine. Not the way that it works, cause I was late like a jerk. There's not a day where I could find a way to break from the hurt. Your body missing, so we never got to wave to the hers. I hope you're listening, I love you, man, I miss you.
Look, man, my
Absurd.
body was missing, so I couldn't even find the body, so they couldn't wave at a hearse. Yeah, so this is a lot of guilt, and this is the right thing to do, is to experience the emotion, the guilt over something I could have done but didn't do, the anger, possibly at yourself, and maybe anger at somebody else. This is also a stage of grief, anger. Followed. I mean, it takes. I'm totally blanking on the 5 steps. I could look them up, but I won't. Look up the 5 stages of grief and loss. And some people say there's 6 because 6 is meaning, finding meaning in it, and that's how you become anti-fragile. That's how you experience post-traumatic growth. That takes a long time, or not necessarily a long time, but it can take a long time to process what happened. But feeling the emotions is important. When the time is right, trying to work this into how can you learn from this? Again, you don't want to do this too soon when you're still grieving, but how can you learn from what happened? How can you help others? How can you put meaning? How can you find meaning in this? Again, if you're too close to the event, you're not going to be able to do this. But if there's something in your past, how can you find meaning in it? Maybe it's a possible or a common thing to see is somebody experiences some loss, and then after grieving, they will work or volunteer or open an organization or donate time or money to an organization that helps other people in that same situation or helps the people that they weren't able to help. So there is ways to find meaning in this. Okay, this got quite long. Tell me how you interpreted this. Tell me the things I got wrong. Tell me the things you agree with me on. And I will see you here next time. Hey, D-Rock again. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoy what I'm doing here. If this kind of thing is interesting to you, and especially if you like those bad drawings at the beginning, you might be interested in my weekly newsletter. It explores money's role in a meaningful life. So you can check that out at meaning.blog if you want. It takes this and it goes a lot deeper. So if you like that, check it out. Let me know what else I should be doing, what else I could be doing, and I'll see you here next time.